But I want to have some use the last 20 minutes now for a bunch of questions, right? So, and let's start with the first one. That's from my point of view, the pros and cons of having these visual capabilities integrated in one solution versus having them in a separate solution and then have to do an integration. I'm interested to get the perspective here. Let's start with Scott on this one, right? So what's, from your point of view, pros and cons of having this all in one solution versus having a separate solution?
Yeah, of course, having them separate may be simpler in some context, but for a lot of our customers and what Stephen just showed with that building configuration system is a good example. If I have that building and I'm looking at I'm trying to put a window in it and I'm dragging the window, if I don't have the CPQ, the engineering rules tied with my visual, I may not know that I can't put that window in this place because of a column. Or I may not know that the cost of putting it there is going to be much higher because I have to move that column. So having that visual and the interactive visual tied directly to the underlying configuration rules is really an important element of being able to do these kinds of configurations in my mind.
Got it. And I'm pretty sure there are other opinions here about that. Let's maybe talk to Nick or to Mark about that, right? So because you have more visual-oriented solution, what's your point on this one? The pros and cons of having it in separate solutions versus having it all in one solution.
My perspective is we're agnostic. You can bring your CPQ, or you can, if you have a somewhat simple, configuration, you can do that inside of Threekit. So, I think it's best to give the flexibility to the customer, to the manufacturer, to say, you can bring it in or you can bring your own.
But I mean that, but let me ask one thing, because in this case it has an impact, because in one case I have the integration. So from a customer perspective, I would think that saves me some time and money potentially, right? Versus when I have to do an integration, that's more work. Maybe it's interesting to get also perspective from Walpole or Zaelab.
Exactly. No, happy to jump in, Frank, because I couldn't agree more. Value will be perceived, right, in the eye of the beholder, which is the customer in this particular case. Whether they integrate or whether it's embedded really depends on their own capability, right, to understand what they want out of their visual configuration. And this is portrayed by the connection. I love that particular remark that says you gotta tie up your configuration rules, obviously with your visual representation. Absolutely. Now, whether you do that embedded or whether you do that, as far as an integrated with a standalone solution, it doesn't matter, as long as that is very fluid, it's very straightforward, and it doesn't give you a headache, right? That is what you're looking for as a customer. And you know what? You're right, Frank. It will depend on the price tag, whether I want it inside or outside of how I integrate, and what's the price tag of the actual technology that sits behind it. But yeah, value will be in the eye of the beholder, and that's the customer.
Yeah, I think the reality is, right, when you look in the B2B space and you look at B2B manufacturers, who has ever come across a scenario where there's a one-size-fits-all solution that you can just take something completely out of the box and deliver the experience and the configurability and the customizations that you're going to need to deliver your experience to your business users? So we like very much the idea of bringing these composable solutions to the table for our customers so that we can start first with the experience, and then we walk our way backwards to the technologies that are going to enable it. And that's really what you start to see with technologies like Threekit and K-Bridge in particular, is that they're delivering that visualization piece of the puzzle where, you can effectively control and manage what that experience needs to be that you're going to deliver to your different types of users and tailor it specifically according to them.
But hey, since we have a customer on the call, right? So from Mike, what was your perspective? How important was that for you to have that in one solution or to have two different solutions? Was that even a consideration?
No, it wasn't. We like the concept of being under one solution, and that solution worked for us. We were really more concerned about a 2D drawing and the engineering behind that for the configuration, as opposed to, you know, maybe what color something is or a visual that in that regard from a 3D perspective. So for us, the integration was more about how can we make this visualization tool and couple it in so it's more seamless and intuitive with our existing quoting software, because that's a very complex software that was homegrown. We weren't going to easily transition that into anything else. So that was really the biggest consideration for us.
Got it. And I think it's always good to customer check some of these assumptions, right? So otherwise you see it from a different perspective. Anyway, it's good that we have every perspective on the call. Anyone else who wants to add something to this specific question? Okay, so nobody wants to talk about that anymore, then let's not do that. So then the next question that I had, because I see that always important, especially for customers who work with manufacturing solutions, as they want to integrate their CPQ solutions with a CAD solution, right? So that be the traditional big solutions here, the Autodesk SolidWorks, PTC Creo could be something, a cloud CAD solution or something like that. I was just wondering, how important is that for you? And Mike, since I still see you large here on my screen, let's start with you on that one. How important was that for you to integrate with the CAD solution?
So I didn't speak to that in the intro, but that we're actually almost seeing more benefit out of that than we are out of the visual up front. CAD has always been kind of our bottleneck. By being able to implement this with a CAD solution, we've taken you know, the time it may take to do a design for one of our designers or drafters from 4 hours down to about an hour and a half, which is substantial. It also eliminates duplicate data entry. You know, you enter data in once, it flows through the system and builds the components. The other side of that is we get to control that design. Some of the other softwares we looked at, you really needed a true programmer or the company you're purchasing it from to do the programming for you, and the methods we've installed are easily programmed in-house. So we've seen a huge benefit from being able to integrate with CAD.
Excellent. How about you, Scott, in general? I think for engineering intent, that's also a big selling point, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, Mike just said it pretty clearly. A lot of our customers, some of our customers can get through our ability to do drawings, everything they need out of the box with K-Bridge, but many of our manufacturing customers, once they get that order, they need to be able to put it into a CAD system in order to drive their downstream manufacturing processes. And so, you know, we have support integrations to all the CAD systems that you mentioned. One thing to consider is, you know, a lot of the integrations are what I would call a master model sort of approach, where you have to pre-build a CAD model and then turn things on and off within CAD. What we do and what is often required is what we call a generative approach, where we can actually generate the assembly into the CAD system dynamically. And that's a much more powerful approach, and it's something that should be considered when you're looking at the complexity of the type of product that you're working on.
How about Elfsquad or Epicor? Anything to add here from a vendor perspective?
Yeah, maybe I can add something.
Yep.
What you see is typically you have different types of connections with CAD. The first one is if you have an engineering product, of course, then the first step in the following logistical process is not production, it's engineering. So what you typically see is that you have to create a new BOM and a new routing. And indeed, it's way more efficient to do it generative than to do it binary. But you also have a lot of our customers that they have quite standard products. So if you can parameterize your product in a way that you can generate CAD drawings, for example, 2D drawings or work drawings or sewing elements or stuff like that in the browser, you can avoid going through the process of having to connect it to a CAD system before it goes into production. It makes it way simpler. And in many cases, that's a possibility. So just something that I would like to add here.
Excellent. Excellent. Anything else from your point of view, Garrett?
Yeah, sure. I think it's kind of an interesting topic because, I mean, look back at the history of KB Max and Epicor CPQ. It actually started as a configurator for CAD solutions. Being able to set those rules in place was absolutely important for customers, as opposed to, you know, allowing anyone to kind of go free roam and build something that maybe manufacturing can't handle or the business. So it kind of started there, and we've continued to evolve into now more of that CPQ space that, you know, we offer our solution, but at the same time, we still, you know, have our roots tied deep within the product. So you can automate and bring in any CAD solution and connect to Epicor CPQ to same, you know, leverage that technology that you're still using today, but then also take it even further with, you know, more visually pleasing visuals, as opposed to, you know, maybe more of those static drawings in CAD that sometimes can present themselves. So there's definitely opportunity there for Epicor CPQ customers to continue leveraging CAD solutions as they see fit.
Excellent. Then I think I would still like to get the system implementer point of view here, right? So from Stephen or from Ingmar, how is that for you when you have to run these projects where you have to integrate with CAD solutions? What should customers know about that? What's important?
Exactly. You know, happy to lead on this, you know, Ingmar here. It's, you know, it is about simplicity. It is complex by itself, right? Integrating with CAD, as explained here, you know, how you do that, okay, fine, is set by the limits of the technology. But there's three important things here, right? I've picked up the words declare the master, you know, so where is that master? Where do you start from? Super important. You know, what data model are you serving? You know, Jan said it from Elfsquad, you got to be careful that you're not overcooking it. You know, if you need something basic, then stick to that, you know, and keep that at that level. And thirdly, it is about flexibility, right? It's just been talked about. You need to be able to, you know, not throw away what you had in the first place, but make sure you can build on it so that it becomes and stays scalable. Because if I have to go back as an integrator and tell my customer, oh, now we need to rework with you in your entire CAD system, then they're not obviously going not to be very pleased, not with the technology and not with the integration either. So it is that kind of modularity and scalability that you're looking for once you set out on a journey with a roadmap that is underlying.
Yeah, I think those are all solid points. You know, I think the future is really going to be driven by those B2B manufacturers that can start to automate and push the generation of that CAD upfront in the configuration process of the quoting experience. And what we find is that it turns into a massive time saver downstream for engineering teams, and it frees them up because they can actually start to focus on higher value added tasks that really revolve around innovating, as opposed to sitting down and potentially drawing or modifying the same thing that they've been doing for the past, you know, 10 to 15 years. So I think that's definitely going to be the future. There will always be a place for the more customized things that will need to be handled. But when you look at a lot of B2B manufacturers, you know, a lot of that, in my opinion, can be automated upfront in the configuration process when you choose the right technology partner.
Excellent, got that. So I want to leave 5 minutes for Q&A, but one question I want to ask, because I think somebody mentioned it, I guess it was probably Nick from CDS Visual, is how visualization solutions can be used to support aftermarket parts, right? So who wants to talk about that? Let's start with Nick, because that's what I remember. Nick, what do you think? What's an example of where that's very beneficial if you have one of your customers maybe as an example to show where they benefit from that?
Yeah, so the customer I talked about today, Heil Garbage Trucks, they've been configuring their garbage trucks using CPQ for a while now, but what they found was they kind of lost access to what was happening once those vehicles were out in service. And what they really wanted to do for aftermarket parts was get people off the phones and get them able to identify a part that they need and make a purchase through their e-commerce website. And in order to do that, they needed to do 2D and 3D visualization, because if you don't get that visual confirmation, you kind of get this like buyer's paralysis type thing where you're not sure if you buy it, and then maybe you do buy it and it's not the right part. So what our customers are doing is utilizing this to kind of increase the or I should say decrease the touch needed to sell aftermarket parts, while also giving the visual confirmation to the customer that they're making the right choice, whether they're searching by serial number, part number, or using image search, or exploding the original configured product and identifying it that way. It just gives them multiple ways to verify that they're actually buying the right part.
And how important is that for everyone else on the call, right? So how much of a use case is that for your solution, or when you implement the solution?
Do you mean, like, did you say use case? You broke up for a second.
Yeah, so that's the use case to do these aftermarket searches, right? I was just wondering, I understand it from a CDS visual point of view, but I was wondering about everyone else who's on the call as a participant, right? So to see how important of a use case is that for them, these aftermarket searches and stuff like that.
Yeah, the aftermarket parts business in general, and we hear this from our customers all the time, it's like I said, it's a void. So if you don't get any type of search functionality, you're going to be wasting resources, you're going to be wasting service rep time, and you're going to have all sorts of different returns for buying the wrong part. And the visualization piece of it just gives that visual confirmation. I always say, like, you wouldn't go to Amazon and buy something that said there was no image, right? You want to see it. And that's the same with aftermarket parts. It's the same with anything. If you don't get a visual representation, even in configured parts nowadays, if you don't get that visual representation, you're just not making a confident purchase.
And then let me ask just like this, like, for example, for Mark, for Threekit, how important is that for you, these aftermarket searches and replacements?
Yeah, I think it's, it's well said, right? If you can view it from a parts and service perspective, which is, do you want that service technician looking through a 50-page PDF trying to find the part, or do you want them to be able to select the part that's broken? Second is this concept of, well, what we really like, if you think about like a specialty vehicle, you can have this concept of a digital garage. I can see the asset that I own, whether if it's a specialty vehicle or it could be an HVAC or whatever it might be. And there's opportunities, or, whatever it is. And then there's opportunities to add on and see if those add-ons are compatible with what I already own, and see that on top of my already existing asset or product. So I think it's very valuable. It's amazing.
I agree. And when you connect that to a CPQ and you have that initial configured product, it gives you like that extension, right? So that you can actually do all of this at once and in one place, virtual garage in this case.
Amen.
Excellent.
Exactly. Maybe let me jump in and push us ahead here a little bit, because I still feel there's a lot of reactivity here, as in, the technology enables, customers to get off the phone and things like that. Let's think about the future, and where we're consulted as Walpole, a strategic consultancy partner, is, okay, so we manufacture, right? And I say it's an engine, right, as the customers or customers of ours do. So let's immediately, right, create the digital twin for that engine, because I don't even want the customer to have to be reactive. I need to be proactive, know exactly where the sensors are, how they operate inside of that engine, that are going to tell me, because of the digital twin concept that needs that visualization. It's going to tell me, indeed, oh, be careful, here we don't get the expected output or reading, through the sensors that we have as part of the engine, but it's going to tell me immediately up front, through the technology, that I, as a vendor in my aftermarket spare part business, need to push a preventive maintenance kit, because I know something is very likely going to break very quickly in the process, which really means this is a huge game changer, right, to anybody, right, in visualization and CPQ, making sure you don't have to pick up the phone or get an order from a customer and guess with the customer whether it's the right thing they're ordering or not. What they need in order to avoid that they have to order the spare part that gets broken. It's to get it replaced before it actually becomes faulty. That is, and then the enablement, you can hear me coming. A lot of data assembled. We got the analytics going. You see the machine learning that comes from it, and then it pushes us with AI onto generative AI, because I'm going to create the content in it for that preventive maintenance program that I'm going to give to my customer as an engine manufacturer. Now, this is a customer in it who likes to work with visualization and CPQ, because it avoids them a lot of unnecessary costs.